Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. It's about decreasing security vulnerabilities within your environment. And before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes for you. Today's session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared after the event. Within the console, you'll see some downloadable content about our product, as well as a chat feature where we'd love to hear where you're viewing this from. And if you have any questions for the presenters, please use the Q&A feature and we will answer them during the Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Oh, and lastly, we have some gift cards for $100 that we will be giving away post-event, so keep an eye on your email for that announcement. Okay. I'd like to kick off this presentation by introducing myself. So, my name is Kimmo, and I'm an account executive here at Recast Software. I'm joined by Juha. Juha is our technical product manager, and he will be the one who's giving a demo on Privilege Manager and Application Manager towards the end of our presentation today. So, for today's webinar, I'm going to give you a short overview of Recast Software. And then we'll get into the product demos for Privilege Manager and Application Manager. We'll have some time after the demos for a quick Q&A session. So be sure to submit all of your questions you have during the presentation. And we'll be pulling some names for the giveaways at the end of the webinar, so make sure to keep an eye on your inbox shortly after today. Okay, just a little bit of background about Recast as a company. Starting from the creation of the community tools, our goal has always been to empower SysAdmins and make their lives a little easier. We have over 1,000 companies using our paid tools across the globe, and they rely on us to help take some of the weight of their IT department's shoulders, so to speak. With a 4.9 out of 5 star the rating on Gartner, and a bit over 96% renewal rate. Our products, I would say they speak for themselves, and the support we provide to our customers, that is second to none. As you can see from this wheel, we cover several areas of software that will be used by our IT team, ranging from systems management to service desk to zero trust and privileged access management, even to third-party patching. But today we're going to be focusing on the zero trust and privileged access management part and third-party patching as well, with the Privilege Manager for privileged access management and Application Manager for third-party patching. So, to get started, let's talk about Privilege Manager. That is our privileged access management tool. With Privilege Manager, you're able to take control back of the admin rights across your network. That drastically increases your overall security as well. You'll be able to grant end users admin right various different ways, which not only improves the end user experience, but it also significantly improves the IT response time for those requests. Naturally, it works with on-prem AD joint devices, but it also works with other AD devices. But at this point, I think, Juha, it is time for you to show the people how Privilege Manager actually works and some of the key use cases that it offers.
All right, so let's see how Privilege Manager is able to help you to actually protect your environment. So if we have and know that the most important thing is to get rid of admin permission. That's like the basic foundation that we just need to do in our environment to be protected and to be able to implement other things that we are able to even more advance our security in our environment. But the base thing we know, get rid of the admin access. And that's the Privilege Manager's idea. So after you install the Privilege Manager, you start to do the configuration. So Here you are able to see the Recast management server, and we have the privilege manager available here, and we are able to go into the setup of the privilege manager. And it starts to ask you questions like, how do you want to set up your environment so that you are able to still run your business applications, people are able to do their work, but still to keep the security in good level. And yeah, always remembering that remove the permanent admin access pretty much from everyone. Even the IT admins, they don't need to have the admin access all the time. They need to have it when they need something or needs to perform some actions that actually require the admin access, but not all the time. So the first thing that we need to do here is to define that on our environments, on the devices that actually have the Recast agent installed, do I want to implement the privilege manager to every single device, or do I want to implement that to a subset of devices? So I'm able to choose all agents, but this case, I want to do targeted devices. So I want to specify this only to some devices, the privilege manager configuration. So I will add a targets. I will use now a device group. So that is coming from some domain. And this time I'm using the on-prem domain here. So I will select this demo on-prem domain. And then I think I have a group called PM clients available here. So let's do this. And then star and search for the group. And let's see if I remember the group name correctly. Yep, I have a group called PM clients, and that AD group contains all my devices in my on-prem environment that I want to start, where I want to start to use privilege manager and get rid of the permanent admin access. So let's save this one. And now everything that I'm going to configure later on this wizard is actually targeted to devices that belong to this device group. All right, happy with that one. So let's go next. And then it asks, do you want to implement the temporary administrator functionality? So when I'm removing the permanent admin access, usually I want to get something instead of the permanent admin access. In case of privilege manager, is the temporary administration functionality. So ability to run something with elevated access when we actually need it. So I'm able to tell you or tell the environment that what is the local user account that I'm going to create on the clients itself. And this local user account is then used to execute something with elevated access. You are able to do also elevation on the domain account. So actually the user account that the end user is using to log in into the device. But still, I want to have this as an option because I want to be able to do the elevation also in fully offline mode, and fully offline mode requires this account here. So I just use the defaults, display name temporary administrator, and the login name will be temp admin. And the privilege manager will then create this local user account on the device if it does not already exist there. So happy with this one. So just next. Then do I want to randomize my local admin account password? This is pretty much for IT support people. So if the device drops out from the domain, I would always have a local admin access where I'm able to know what is the password for that user account, and I'm able to use that to log into the device, even though that it drops out from the domain. So yeah, I want to do that because I want to always have the backup possibility there. That's the ability to always know that, okay, this user account exists there. And I'm able to use a custom account if I want to use that. Okay, I don't want to use the built-in administrator account for this functionality. I'm able to select also the custom local account and then specify the information that what will be the display name of the user account, what will be the login name that will be once again created on the endpoint. But yeah, I will just use the built-in administrator account. That's okay for me. So then going next, and then I'm able to tell you that how do I want to remove the current permanent admin permissions. And privilege manager works in the way that the rules that you define here those will be active on the endpoints. Everything else will be removed from the local administrators group. So now we have 2 members that will be placed to the local administrators group. It will be the temporary administrator account that I specified here earlier, and also the built-in administrator needs to be there. But I want to have also another one. So I want to add to the local administrators group. I want to add a new group still. So let's like here, search domain. I want to add a domain there, and I want to add a domain group. I have workstation admins, if I remember correctly. Workstation AD and star, and let's do the search. Yeah, I had a AD group called workstation admins. So this is not the domain admins. This is a separate Active Directory group that someone has created, and that contains the user accounts that for some reason I want to have the permanent admin access all the time to every single device where Privilege Manager will be installed. Might not be the best configuration, but usually it's pretty much what we want to have there. So we have a group that if someone belongs to that group, they are able to perform admin actions on the devices. But just to be careful that the members of this group should be highly limited, maybe even so that it's empty group by default. Then you add, for example, your ADM accounts to that group when you actually have the need to do something to every single device in your environment. Otherwise, I would use the built-in local administrator if you just want to perform admin access to a single device. But all right, let's add this one. So these will be the administrators on all of my endpoints and no one else. Those will be the people with having the admin access there. All right, so when the configuration is done, then we are pretty much ready to go. The only thing that we need to configure, or not need, but if you want to do, like self-service elevation. Do you want to give some of your users the permissions to self-elevate their credentials? And that happens on the configuration and self-service rules. So here we are able to create a rules that who are allowed to elevate their own account or this local account to be an administrator on the device. So yeah, I want to create a allow type of service rule. I want to select that, okay, everyone who is able to log into the devices, they are able to self-elevate. Yeah, probably the better one is would be to limit that to a single users or group of users, but I just used everyone here now on this demonstration. And then I want to target these self-service rules to my custom target group. The custom was built during the wizard. So once again, the same devices that belong to this PM clients AD group, and it's active. So let's save that one. So now we have removed permanent admin access pretty much from everyone. The only exception is the single AD group called workstation admins, that they still have that. And then the best practice would be that highly limit members of that group, maybe even keep it as an empty group by default, and then adding people when they actually need to do, for example, something that needs to be targeted to multiple devices there at the same time with admin access. And then we have replaced that one with this self-service one. So everyone is able to elevate, but the elevation happens only when the elevation is actually needed and only for the action where the elevation is needed. So not all the time there. So let's see next what it looks like on the client side. Okay, and now on the client side, I have a computer that is joined to the on-prem domain. I have logged in with user account that does not have a admin access. So if I just go in command line, oh, come on. There we go. And who am I? I'm able to see that I'm user account from my demo domain, and I don't have a admin access. So for example, if I try to do the same, but then forcing to run as an administrator, it starts to ask the elevation. So I don't have the permanent admin access. So what actually happened, if I go into computer management and start that application, I'm able to see that Privilege Manager changed my group membership. So in the groups, if I go into the administrators, I'm able to see that the building admin is there. Also the temp admin, the local accounts that the Privilege Manager created, those have the permanent admin access. And then my workstation admins group has the permanent admin access also. And also, in addition to the administrators group management, the Privilege Manager also created this temp admin account. It also set the randomized password for my building administrator account. So that's a good thing. I don't have a permanent admin access because no one actually should pretty much have the permanent admin access there. Not needed, but sometimes there are cases where the admin access is actually needed, and there the Privilege Manager is able to help you and your end users to do that. So in this demo, for example, I have selected one application, a 7-zip application, and for some reason, this application is not installed to my device, and I want to have it there, and I need to have it there, so I just need to install it. And what happens when I double click the file, the operating system asks me for credentials that have permissions to install the device level application. So it's asking for the elevation. And now how the Privilege Manager actually works for the users, under the more choices where you are able to see all the credential providers, we have a credential provider for Recast Privilege Manager. And when I select that one, I have multiple ways that I'm able to elevate the access. On the server side, remember when I created this self-service rule for everyone? That's the reason why I'm able to use the self-service modes that are run with local account and run with domain account option here. The run with local account will just use the temp admin account we created. The run with domain account would actually, for example, allow to run with my personal not admin access, but my personal account with the elevated access. And the use activation code, that's the offline mode. So if you are not connected to environment or internet at all, then you would be able to use the activation code. But I will just use the run with local account, and I will say the reason. Why do I need to have the elevated access? I want to install 7-zip. That's my reason here. And then clicking the yes, and then what happens on the background, the Privilege Manager actually checks if this is allowed action on this device for the logged on user, so for the user account that I have logged onto the device. And it was allowed, so it activated or allowed the elevation of admin permissions. And now this setup application has admin access. If I launch browsers or any other applications, they don't have any admin access, and I don't have admin access on my login session. But the setup program for the 7-zip is now running with a elevated access, and now I'm able to do the installation to the program files, and that's the folder, for example, that requires an admin access to be changed by default. All right, so easy. I just needed to specify the reason there, and I was able to install the application. But because the Privilege Manager is integrated into Microsoft's own user account control window as a credential provider, that works also on every single location where the elevated access is required. Not just, for example, how I did here, so executed an executable, but also, for example, changing the operating system configuration. And for example, here on the operating system configuration, I'm able to see the applications that are currently installed. We have a instead application here. If I go uninstall and select yes, I want to actually uninstall it, it actually starts a Windows installer process there and starts to do the uninstall. But on certain point of the uninstallation process, the Windows installer sees that, hey, we need to have elevated access to actually make the changes. So once again, it pops out the user account control, and now I'm also able to elevate this one, even though that I didn't double click any installable file or executable file there. So once again, selecting the Recast Privilege Manager, uninstall, and the program was it was installed. All right. So specifying reason there, and of course the reasons are always recorded on the server side, so the administrator of the Privilege Manager is always able to go and see what are the reasons why people are elevating on what devices and who is elevating. But that's it. Now the application is gone there. So the target of getting rid of the permanent admin access and then replacing that with something that allows the users that you want to have the permissions to self-elevate, for example, or then just use the activation code to make the elevation. So that's the idea of the Privilege Manager, making that really simple process and easy enough also for the end users to actually use that functionally, but still getting the security in much better place by removing, hopefully, all the the permanent admin access things that you have in your environments and replacing that with a temporary admin access.
Nice. Hey, thanks for the demo of Privilege Manager, Juha. Now let's talk about third-party patching and our product for that, Application Manager. We have recently just launched Application Manager, and we're really excited to show it today. Application Manager, it allows your team to save hours by automating third-party patching. Application Manager does all of the testing, packaging, and all of the deploying of software updates, so your team doesn't need to always be following software vendors for those updates and then having to manually package, test, and then finally deploy those. The saying is true, I think, with third-party patching, every day is Patch Tuesday. Application Manager works with Intune, MECM, and as well as it works with WSUS. But I think it's okay. Enough talking from me. Juha, let's dive into some use cases for Application Manager. Go ahead, Juha.
Application Manager is then able to help you to make your environment more secure. And Application Manager is all about updating the applications and making sure that you have the latest versions on those applications, so you are able to also at the same time deploy all the required security related updates automatically to your environment for these, mainly these smaller third-party applications. And in this demonstration, I'll be using our Intune integration in Application Manager. So the Intune integration actually does not require any installations to your own environment. You don't need to have any server components there. You don't need to have any agents running on the devices itself where you want to deploy the applications. Only thing that you need to have is the access to our Application Manager portal. And then, of course, you need to have permissions to your Intune environment, or at least someone needs to have the permissions so they are able to grant access to the Application Manager to actually change the Intune and create new applications there and create the deployments. And on this demonstration, I will be showing how you are able to actually use the Application Manager to make Firefox available for everyone in the organization, but only after the IT has tested the application with their own pilot devices, and also making sure that on all the devices where users has selected to install the Firefox application, it will be kept up to date. So all the time when new releases are released, we will want to push also those applications there to those devices. All right, so this happens in our Application Management portal. And the first thing on our Intune integration is that when you go in to the Intune integration configuration, we have a functionality called Application Manager Application Groups. So this actually means that you are able to link our applications that are available in the application catalog to a Azure AD group. And then our functionality makes sure that every time when user installs that single application, for example, here on the first row, we are able to already see the Firefox application. When someone installs this application, the environments, the application manager will automatically place the device object into this Azure AD group. And this Azure AD group, of course, you are able to use that anywhere where you need to have a something targeted to only devices where the Firefox is installed. But in this case, I will be using this inside our deployment processes in Application Manager. But let's start to actually create the deployment process. So I will go into services, Intune, and then deployment processes. And I just start to create a new deployment process. You can have any number of different deployment processes, and every deployment process can deploy just single application or multiple applications. But I will just call this Mozilla Firefox. So this is my deployment process name. And then when I'm selecting the deployment process, I want to select the applications that I want to deploy using this deployment process. And no surprise here, I will just select the single application. Okay, this application is already included in another deployment process that we have there, probably in global update Firefox. So that's cool. I'm just able to select it still here. And then this will be the only application that I want to deploy using this deployment process. So now I have selected the applications. Now I need to define how I want to deploy the Firefox to my environment. And this is done by creating the deployment steps. And okay, let's start to create my first deployment step. And my requirement was that every single version that Firefox is releasing, we want to test first internally here. So I will search for a group here, and I would use IT Global and then pilot devices. I think that was it. Let's search for that group. Let's see if we are able to find it. Yeah. Here it is. So this is a group in our Azure AD tenant, and this contains all the pilot devices where I want to test that new versions are okay and we are able to use those in our environment. So I select this one, and then we will specify how do I want to deploy the application to this group this time. I want to be that a required type, and of course the assignment mode will be include. I want to actually install the application to these. It will be required. Yeah, I'm able to show all the notifications, so I'm able to say show all those notifications for the users of these pilot devices there. The other ones, I would be able to specify also email notifications if I want to send some emails to someone that, okay, now the application is there on the pilot devices, go ahead and test those. I don't want to do that. I will just use also the default restart settings. And these restart settings are actually the Intune related configuration there. And then the scheduling. How I want to schedule the application availability as soon as possible, so it's able to start to download the installation media immediately when it detects a new version there. And then the installation deadline. I want to make that a scheduled one, and I want to wait for, let's say, 2 business days there. And then I want to specify that I want to force the installation at, let's say, 9 a.m. on the client side, and then any day of the week, any day of the month is okay for me for this. And this actually means that immediately make the installation available there, and then allow the customers to see the application there, but force the installation after 2 days there for the pilot devices. So, all right, I will just create this first step there. And then what I want to do, I want to make that available. And who I want to make this application available, I want to make it available for all users. So I just select this one. And then it will create an additional step for me. It's not going to be required type. I want to just make it available. So, all right, that's good. And for the end users, I think it's okay to just show, in this case, notification for computer restart. So using the default here. In this case, I don't want to specify any email notifications or specify how I'm going to handle the restarts if the installation package for some reason requires a restart. And for this, I want to be scheduled. So I want to wait, let's say, once again, 2 business days. And I don't need to specify in this case any time because it's just making available there. But the main idea is that I will wait 2 days after I have forced the installation on my pilot devices. So I have 2 days of time to collect feedback from the users of the pilot devices. Is the new Firefox application version okay or not? And then we are able to make that available for every single user on our organization. Okay, so that's my next step. And then the only thing that I'm missing now, that when new users are installing the application from the company portal, we need to always force the new updates for the version for those users. And for that, I'm going to use the group that we first saw on the application group. So I'm going to search for that. And it was called am-mozilla not dash, but Firefox devices. Let's see if I got this correct here. Do I find the group there from my tenant? There it is. So this contains all the devices where users have installed my Firefox from the company portal, as I have made it available for everyone. And for these devices, because we know that there is the Firefox there, okay, the same thing. It's always saying that it's already included in the other deployment process, but no worries, I'm going to anyway delete this one when we are done. So in this case, I want to do required installation type because I know that the Firefox is already installed there. Yeah, I will use the same default notification there, no emails, the default restart settings. So now this time, how I want to make the application availability. Maybe I want to wait for a few days until I make this available. But as I'm already waiting 2 days before I'm making the application available for users in company portal, I would be able to just use as soon as possible here, and maybe then as soon as possible also for installation deadline. So for existing clients, after the testing period, I just want to push out the new versions, the devices that already has the older version of Firefox installed, and then creating that. All right, so this is my deployment process. And now every time when we release a new Firefox version, it will always use the same deployment process. Creating your deployment into the Intune, making the deployment first to the pilot devices, and after that, a couple of days waiting time, then make it available for every user and immediately starts to update the existing devices that has the application there. And this is the way that you are able to meet the requirement that for these, especially these small third-party application that gets a lot of new updates, constantly security updates also, to make those up to date in your environment, and therefore making your environments much more secure when these devices are, for example, not always connected to your internal network, but also directly to the internet and other networks. So it's really important to keep those applications up to date, and this will totally automate the process for you. You just first create the process, and then every time new version comes, it will follow the same process and deploy it to your environment.
Oh, before we get started with the Q&A session, I have a quick poll up on the screen for you. If you will, please take a moment to respond. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. All right, let's get started with Q&A. If anyone has any final questions, please feel free to add them into the Q&A chat box. For any questions we do not get to, we will follow up with you, each of you directly. Okay, first question. We have William from UK. What types of reports does Privilege Manager have? Well, with Privilege Manager's reporting capabilities, you will have full visibility into exactly which employees and which devices have the certain types of permissions. Those reports also provide data on users who have requested passwords. Beyond those preset reports, we have custom reporting that allows you to create reports kind of however you want and see the data as you see the best. So in short, we have reports for group rules, user rules, computers, temp IDs, password reporting, and like I mentioned, we have possibilities for you to create custom reporting. I hope that answers the question from William. Let's take another one. Here's another question. It's coming from Marcel. How often are applications added to the library of Application Manager? Okay, we have added like 65 new applications to the list this year. That makes it around 15 new apps per month. That number can be higher, of course. That's average at this point. We have very high targets on the numbers for new applications, but we're still focusing only on the most used applications and not adding any so-called unnecessary applications there. And what comes to those existing applications and their updates, we publish them all the new updates to our service right after the vendor's release, and the average release time for those after the vendor's release is around 1 working day at the moment. And of course, all security related updates, they have the highest priority there. I hope this answers your question, Marcel. And looks like we have time for one last question at this point. This question is coming from Roman. What are the supported systems for Privilege Manager? The client side, all supported Windows operating systems. They are supported for endpoints. So in all Windows operating systems are supported. And for server side, since our 5.0 version, Microsoft Windows Server 2016 or later is supported. So anything after 2016 is supported there. I hope that answered that question from Roman as well. Okay, with that, we're concluding today's presentation. Thank you for the questions. And again, if we didn't get to yours, someone from Recast will be following up with you directly. If you would like to have more information about Privilege Manager or Application Manager, or really just about Recast software or other products, please visit our website at recastsoftware.com. Oh, and we'll be emailing the gift card winners shortly. And also a copy of this recording is included as well. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.